everybody. You're listening to 94.9 CHRW, and welcome to Gradcast Radio. Gradcast Radio is the official radio show of SOGS, or the Society of Graduate Students, if you are not a regular, here at Western University in London, Ontario. And here on the show, we talk to a bunch of different graduate students where they showcase their research and tell us all about the interesting things they do in the lab and outside the lab, I guess. So, my name is Matt Riopel, and I'm joined today by our second host, James Goacher. James.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good.
That's good. So James actually does a lot of work behind the scenes to sort of get this show off the road, and he actually has an important role in SOGS too. Do you want to tell people about that?
Yeah, so I'm the VP Academic, so I'm one of the executive on the SOGS Council. So my job's basically just to oversee any sort of academic-related issue through the Society of Graduate Students. So this was kind of one of the things this was my baby going into this term. So I really wanted to have some sort of a way that grad students could showcase their research in a new and interesting way rather than just journal publications all the time. So I thought this would be a lot more fun.
Yeah, and it is a lot more fun.
I think so.
It's a lot more fun for us and for the guests and for Ed. I'm sure he loves it. I wish Ed had a mic so he could talk to us, but that's too bad. As our producer, he does all the boards and everything, and he's a lot of fun too. Yeah, so today we only have two guests, right? So this is going to be a lot of this, just a lot of listening to me, listening to James. I'll make a lot of references to Ed.
It's
too.
Mostly because the two guests are just a lot more interesting than usual.
Yeah.
Not to say that our previous guests were not interesting. It's just these guests are so interesting, we had to give them some extra time.
Yeah, and we had to cut. And you know who you are, who decided you weren't going to come at the last second. You were cut, and you will not be back on the show. So, all right, enough about that. Here, who we're joined with today, we have Daniel Nabben. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, you?
Good. And you're going to tell us about your research.
You're right.
And can you give us just a little bit of background and maybe just an overview of what you do?
Okay, so I'm studying sport management, like broadly speaking, sport management in kinesiology, and my focus is on charity sporting events and their role in building sense of community in a community in Jeju Island, South Korea, and particularly through these beach volleyball tournaments that this organization called Jeju Furey runs, that are the most well attended, the most looked forward to events on the island.
On Jeju Island, is South Korea like a really big hub for volleyball?
No, not at all. Not
okay.
at all. In fact, that's one of the barriers of getting the South Koreans themselves involved in these events, is that they're not familiar with the sport like we are back in here in North America.
Okay, and so is Jeju sort of its own like isolated community, or is it well populated?
Well, yeah, it's funny. So there's 500,000 people on the island. But it's the Jeju-Seoul air route is the most flown air route on Earth, actually. So there's like 7 million tourists who come every year. And they come for all kinds of reasons. Like there's conferences, and honeymooners flock there. There's all kinds of museums and places to go. There's 12 beaches. There's a mountain, a volcanic mountain. There's scuba diving. There's surfing. So there's all kinds of reasons for people to visit the island. So in that sense, it's very well connected to the rest of the country. But, at the same time, they're islanders, and, they stick to their little communities. And for them, like, the island's not very big. It's about an hour from the north to the south, maybe an hour and a half from the east to the west. And for them, that's like they won't travel that very often. They think if you say you're going to the south, and they're like, "Whoa, you're going now? It's late." And you're like, "Yeah, I'll be back tonight too." It's different. Everything's relative, I guess, right? And it's different for them too.
So what's the culture like there? So that's kind of one little piece of their culture, but what are the big differences that you find?
Big differences in Korean culture or in Jeju culture particularly?
Well, maybe both, actually.
Okay. So in Korean culture, very much group oriented. If you say you're going to a restaurant by yourself, you get, "Oh, are you okay? Is something wrong? I'll go with you." They do things in groups. They do things in packs. If you are planning something, they'll ask you who else is going. Like they want to go in a big group of people, and they want to do it all together, and they want to stay for the whole day. Do activity after activity. If you go out with them, you don't go out for a drink. You go out for drinks, and then you go to the karaoke bar for more drinks, and then you go for food, and then you're 4 or 5 in the morning, and you might go out and do some more things. They have like they have words for it. Ichat, samcha, and it's like level 1, level 2, level 3 of, when you're going out. It's all about being in groups, and doing things together, and they're very family oriented. You live with your parents for a lot longer, or they live with their parents for a lot longer than we normally do here, and they're still the parents and the children and the grandparents are still very much involved in each other's lives. So that's just that in that sense, it's very different. Also, like the restaurant lifestyle, it's all teeny tiny mom and pop restaurants, tons and tons and tons of them everywhere, and you go in and that cook is also your waitress or your waiter and the owner, and they do 1 or 2 dishes and they specialize, and that's what you get. Wow. And so it's a much more homey atmosphere, I find, much more natural. Like, it's not franchise corporate, it's more mom and pop community.
And was that community feel something that you knew beforehand? Like,
No.
So this was not something that you were searching for as kind of a thing that you were looking for in researching, that community feel with your research?
Not
right?
at all. No.
It just it's like an added benefit, right?
Super added benefit. Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
So how much time did you spend, or had you been to North Korea, or not North? Well, maybe you'd like to go to North Korea.
I have been, technically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually, we want to get on that.
Well, now I'm curious.
Well, only technically, like, there are these tunnels that the North Koreans had built after the war to infiltrate South Korea. These big, huge tunnels, about 23 of them, they think, they believe. And a few of them are open to the public as tourist things. And you go in, and you can go, and they go into North Korea, right? They come out in South Korea, and they go into North Korea. So you can go in, and at some point, you cross that border, and you're technically in North Korea.
Right, you didn't shake Kim Jong-un's hand, though.
No.
Right, see Dennis Rodman out there. No, right. So South Korea, though, had you not been there prior to starting your research?
I had been there prior to starting my research, yes.
Okay.
I'd lived there for almost 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, basically the day after I did my last exam in undergrad, I moved to South Korea. I stayed there for a year, moved to Finland for a year, and then went back and then stayed there for the rest of the time, pretty much.
Wow, you've been all over the place.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky.
So what brought you there?
Initially, I finished undergrad, I had student debt, and I wanted to get into teacher's college after a year, and my cousin was already living there, and he said, why don't you come? It's a good salary, they pay for your flight, they pay for your apartment, and he's like, there's beaches, great food, great people. I'm like, done. That's so easy to say yes to. Can't go wrong. Yeah, and then about 2 or 3 weeks after being there, I'm like, okay, this is awesome. This is just an amazing place, and I want to stay here, for at least 1 more year.
So then you found a project that fell in line with staying there.
Well, I was teaching English, and it just so happened, like, we had a friend who passed away, and he had 2 kids. His wife had 2 kids, and we thought, well, geez, we gotta help these kids out. Let's raise some money and try and take care of their post-secondary education. And so I thought, well, what can we do? And everyone was like kind of throwing out ideas, and I thought, well, we had a bunch of things we're going. We had auctions, we had T-shirt sales, we had collections, we had all these things. And then I thought, well, let's do a beach volleyball tournament. So we did the beach volleyball tournament, and then it was really successful. It's like, to my surprise. And then I thought, okay, I'll do one more. And then we did another one, and then that one was also successful, and I was like, okay, well, we met our goal. Like, we raised enough money for the post-secondary education of these 2 kids. We made $20,000, we sent it over, that can go into a trust fund, and that's done. But everyone was loving the events, so we're like, okay, well, let's keep doing that, but let's find another beneficiary. So let's do something local, because we all enjoy the island so much, we wanted to give back to the community. So that's what we did. We found local families that are disadvantaged, and just kept on doing events, and then one thing led to another. Okay, well, we're doing beach volleyball in the summer, let's do something else in the winter. And then someone says, well, I like this sport, let's do badminton, let's do bowling, let's do ping pong. And then it just grew and grew, and then there was this day that we had a boat party, and it was a massive 400 people filled up this big boat. We went up and down the coastline, sunrise, sunset, all that kind of stuff. And afterwards there was this big to do on Facebook about the event, and these people kept on saying, well, okay, this organization, Jeju Furey, is really building community on the island. And I was like, whoa, I hadn't thought of that and heard of that. And then a couple months later, when I was talking to Dr. Meisner here at Western, I said, well, this is what's happening on the island, and it's related to sports big time, and they're talking about all these good things. This is what I want to research. And then she said, yeah, and then here I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so So have you posed this sort of question, like how the volleyball or how at least organizing these sorts of events are making change in the community?
Right. Yeah. What is the impact of charity sporting events on building a sense of community on Jeju Island, in particular among the expatriate community?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a large expat community then?
Well, technically, like relatively speaking, no. It's small. There's only about 800, but that's the thing. It's so meaningful to this small group.
Right.
And then you have far larger expatriate communities on the mainland of Korea who come down for this event, and they're just like, what's going on over here? You guys are nuts. Like, everyone gets involved. It's all voluntary. We build the courts, we clean the sand, we have all kinds of food that gets cooked, all voluntary, all done by people's, own charitable spirit. And we have this great party, twice a year. And that's just for the volleyball. And they're just like, well, we have nothing in Seoul like this. And they have 1 million foreigners. And then Busan has, how many hundreds of foreigners. And they're like, we have nothing like this. So it's like, there's something special going on. And I was like, this is worthwhile, I thought, researching.
Yeah, so have you found, do you want to talk about any of your findings that you've actually...
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of people are saying that they have this emotional attachment to the Jeju community far more than any other community they've lived in. And I've interviewed people who've lived on the mainland, people who've lived in other parts of the world, who've been, in sport teams, or they've been in, art this or community that or nonprofit this, and they're just like, they cannot explain how much more Jeju means to them, and they feel that the charity sporting events in particular are what brings everyone together.
So I'm curious, is it the expats in particular that you were interviewing?
Yes.
Not the native?
I interviewed both.
Okay.
But it's funny, is you have a different take on it.
Yeah.
The expats, right, because they come alone, most of them, and they come for a year, and they are much more open to building these friendships. As you meet someone who's similarly minded, boom, that's your friend. And then gets you connected to another friend. And then with the rest of the community, you meet them on this sort of regular basis at all these events. And then you're doing more things together in your bigger groups. And it's just this positive energy throughout. And one thing that they mentioned was, in Jeju more so than other communities they've lived in, is there's this real sense of support. Like, if you're in trouble, you put out one message, and then that network works for you, and you get all kinds of support in any way you might think of, financially, or like in terms of, how can I help you? What can I do to help you out of this rut or whatever? And they just talk about these stories, and that kind of stuff is coming out all over the place in these interviews.
Wow, that's really impressive. And congratulations to have put together all of these events and to actually get people that are attending them, and you're actually making a difference there for all the expats. And I know personally that I have a lot of friends or people that I know that have gone to South Korea and to teach for multiple years, and having something like that is really useful.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to have such a hands-on project. I think that's the coolest part too.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Right.
But that's actually all the time we have for you, Dan.